What's up, everybody? So today I'm going to show you how to set up your server so that you can go ahead and allow file uploading. It's really cool. So I'm just going to be using a combination of Multer and Cloudinary. There are many ways to do this. This is just the way that we're going to be going over today. So just to get started, you want to make sure that you have the Cloudinary package installed. You also want to make sure that you have data URI installed, .env installed, and then Multer installed there as well too. So if you haven't done that, just go ahead, pause the video, and get those installed. Alrighty, so now you need to make sure that you have a Cloudinary account. So go ahead and create one of those if you haven't, and if you have, let's go ahead and jump on over here. So we're going to jump into our Cloudinary dashboard. So this is what it should look like once you have an account. We will need some variables off of this here to go ahead and configure our Cloudinary there. And what we're going to do is we will need the cloud name here, your API key, and your API secrets. You definitely don't want anybody to have your API secret, so you want to make sure that you are keeping that secret. And what we're going to do is we're just going to upload these into our env file here. So I'm just going to create these real fast. So let's go ahead and get that into our env file. So come on over. So I'm going to name my Cloudinary name. That's just going to be my username, and then I will have a Cloudinary API key, and then I'm also going to have a Cloudinary API secrets. Okay, here. So the API key is what's going to be your key. So let's go on back. So you can see here, API key, that's going to be your key. API secret, that is going to be your secret. So I'm just going to go ahead, pause this video, just so you guys can see that, and then we'll hop on in here. So you guys go ahead and do that as well too. Okie dokie. So once you have that all configured, now we're going to hop over into our files. So you want to create two files. We want to have one Cloudinary config file and then a separate one called our Multer config file. I went ahead and put those inside of a config folder there. You don't have to do that. That's just how I like to configure mine. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and bring in our package. So our first package that we have here is Cloudinary, right? So let's go ahead and bring that in, Cloudinary, if I could spell. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and bring in our .env, just so that we're able to use those environment variables inside of here. Alrighty, so now this is where we're actually going to create our config. So we're just going to call this const Cloudinary config. And all this is going to be is just a function here. Inside, it's actually just going to operate as middleware. So we're just going to pass in our rec, res, and next here. And then inside of this, we only have one thing. So we're just going to do our Cloudinary, Cloudinary, and then .config. And inside of that, it's just going to take an object. And our object is just going to have our cloud name. And this is going to come process.env dots Cloudinary name. Then we're going to do the same thing for our API key. And then finally, we're going to do the exact same thing for our secret as well too, for our API secret. Alrighty. And then what we need to do here is we need to make sure that this will go on to our next middleware. So we just need to pass in next, and then we'll just go ahead and export here. So there are two things we're going to want to export. Our first thing that we're going to export is just going to be our config there, so Cloudinary config. And then the second thing that we're going to export is going to be an uploader, and this is just going to come right off of our package here. So Cloudinary.uploader. And there is one thing that I did forget. You do need to make sure that you add .v2 here at the end of your import just so that you make sure that you're utilizing the right version of Cloudinary, or you're just not going to get a response back. So just make sure that you have that there. Okay, guys. So now once we have that set up, let's go ahead and hop over to our Multer config file, and let's go ahead and get this configured. So first thing, we're going to bring in our packages. So we will want Multer is one of the packages that we're going to want to bring in. And then we're also going to want to bring in our data URI. So for this, I'm going to be using their parser here. So I'm going to bring in data URI and then /parser. That is what we want to bring in here. And then I'm just going to be using a built-in package as well too called path. So go ahead and bring in your path. Oops. Encoder and then path. Perfect. Alrighty, now once we have that set up, we want to configure a few things. So the first thing we're going to configure is how we store our information here utilizing Multer. So what we want to do is const storage is equal to Multer dot, and if you see here, we have some different options. We have memory storage and disk storage. I'm not going to be going into too much detail about that. That's something that you guys can look into on your own time. But just know that for me, I will be using memory storage here. And then we're just going to tell Multer to go ahead and utilize that. So it's equal to, and then Multer. And then inside of here, we're just going to pass an object with storage as our only key there. Sweet. Alrighty, so now the next thing that we want to use is we want to use our data URI here. So we need to create a new instance of that. I'm just going to call this DURI for data URI. And we're just going to create a new instance for that one there. Okay, so now what we need to do is that we need to actually utilize our data URI here, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to create another callback function that we're going to export here. And all we're going to pass into this is our request, right? And now this is where we want to configure it for sure. So what we're going to need to do here is we're going to want to use a function called format off of our data URI, right? So DURI, dot format, boom. So that will allow us to properly format our information. And now what you're going to want to do here is it's going to take in two parameters. So the first is going to be the extension name from our path here. So what we're going to do, path.ext extension name. You can see that there. And where we're going to get that is off of our file dot, and then it should be off of, give me 1 second. Little brain fart, it happens. So it's going to be, rec.file dot original name. So it's going to be rec.file. And then after that, we're going to do dot original name. And then we just want to make this into toString here. And then our other parameter is going to be rec.file.buffer. Alrighty. And now the last thing is just like before, we want to just go ahead and make sure that we export this. So we're just going to go ahead and have two exports here as well. So our first going to be our uploads, and then the second one is just going to be this data URI that we just created down here. Alrighty, and that should do it in terms of our configuration. So now I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys how to actually put this in use for our router. So in my purposes, all that I really am doing is I'm using Cloudinary to host my images, and then I'm just saving that URL in my database. So I can go ahead and render that on the client side. So what we're going to do is we need to bring in a couple packages, or sorry, not a couple packages, we need to bring in our configuration. So let's just go ahead and create a couple variables here. So const Cloudinary, and we're just going to make this our Cloudinary config that we had here. And then we're going to do the same thing for Multer. So just go ahead and bring in your Multer package as well there. Perfect. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and bring in those variables that we exported. So we have const Cloudinary config, and this is just going to come off of Cloudinary. That's Cloudinary config. And then we also had our uploader, right? So let's go ahead and bring that in off of our Cloudinary file as well too. And then from Multer, we have our Multer uploads. And we'll bring that in. So that's off Multer dots, Multer uploads, and then last thing that we had is our data URI. And we'll go ahead and bring that in as well too. Perfect. Okay. So now let's actually build out the routes. So for my purposes, I'm going to be using a put request, but just know that you can use put request, post request, just whatever works for your program here. But I'm going to be using this put request. And the reason for that is that, like I said, I want to upload the URL into our database, so I need to make sure that that instance is there already. So that's why I'm using a put request. I'm going to upload it and just change an instance that's already in my database. So I'm going to do router.put. I'm just creating my slug here. Okay, and now what we need to do is we need to bring in our Multer uploads as middleware. And we're going to use the dot single off of that. And that's just for a single image. And you pass in a key here. And this is just going to be when we actually send our image back from the client side. This is going to be the key on our key value pair here. And the value will be our actual image, right? So this is going to be the key that we utilize. You can name this whatever you like. I just like to use image raw. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use our Cloudinary config as our next middleware. And then finally, we're just going to go ahead and use our typical rec and res. So now the first thing that we need to do is that we need to actually parse our image that we got. So we're just going to create a new constant. And all we need to do is just pass our request into the data URI that we brought in from our Multer config. And this will just pretty much parse it into something that we can utilize on our side here. And now after you do that, we can just go ahead and get our upload going. So we have uploader.upload, right? And this is going to take a couple variables. There's really only two variables that are required, and that's going to be the image, and then it's going to be a callback function on what to do upon a response from Cloudinary. So we're going to pass in our image. So file.content is where our image is going to be located. I'm also going to pass in another parameter here. So this is just some options that you can pass in. You can do some really cool transformations on here. There's just a bunch of cool stuff that you can do on that. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. I definitely recommend checking out Cloudinary's API just to get more information on that. But these are the presets that I like to utilize. For my image uploading, this pretty much just makes it responsive whenever I get that back. So I went ahead, put that as responsive, right? And now the last thing that we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and set up our callback function. So in here, error and results are the two things that I'm going to pass in. And now this is where I can take my results and upload this into my database. So for me, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Let me edit my post. I'm going to send this through. And now I want to actually get the URL that comes back from our response. So let's go ahead and take a look at what our actual response will look like. So if we come back over here and let's take a look at the API reference. So upon a successful response, we get a whole bunch of information back here, which you guys can look more into on your own time, right? So this is what our response is going to look like. For me, like I said, all I care about is the URL. So I'm going to use secure URL. You can see that there's two URLs, just URL and secure URL. I always recommend going with the secure URL because that is what will have your HTTPS on there. So that's what we're going to be accessing. So we want to access secure URL off of our response there. So let's go back to our code. So how we'll get there, right, is we'll do results, and this is going to be our response, and then dots secure URL is what we want to utilize there. Perfect, and then I just need to pass in my second parameter, and this is just going to be the params there, rec.params.id. Perfect, and then we can just go ahead and send this back. So this is what I'm going to do. And actually the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to console.log. Well, I'll just actually send our result back here as well too, so that you guys can see that actually happened. So what we'll do here is we'll just send back rise.status 200, and for the purposes of this, I'm actually just going to send up our results so you guys can see what we get back on a successful upload there. And then we'll just go ahead and throw in our error as well too. Dots. And of course you definitely want to be more thorough, but for this I'm just going to go ahead and make this funny. You shall not pass, bro. Alrighty. And that right there should do it to get your image uploaded here. So let's go ahead, head on over and actually test this out in Postman. So let us go on over there. Boom. So we come into Postman. I already have mine set up for the route that I want to do. So you want to make sure, one, that, like I said, you need to send it over as form data. So that's what we need to do here. So form data, and then we have our key here. Like I said, our key needs to match what we put inside of our multer-uploads.single. For me, it was image raw. Just make sure that this matches whatever you put it in as. And then you just go ahead and change this to a file. Let's go ahead and select a file real fast. I'm just going to go with this avatar. Perfect. And now let's hit that send and see what we get back. And it says that we cannot do a puts request there. Let's go ahead and head back over and make sure that we have this correct. Oh, yep. And the reason for that is because this is images, and I believe that I put image in Postman. Yep. So let's just add that S on there. Okay, let's try this out one more time. Cloudinary API key is not defined. Okay, so it looks like I'm having some type of error here with my upload here. So let me just go ahead and pause. I'm going to check my env file and we'll just see what's going on with that. Cloudinary underscore API key. Oops. Perfect. Alrighty, so as you guys can see, yep, I definitely have a mistake here. So I put a comma, and as we know, that definitely needs to be a period there. So we'll go ahead and save that. And now, third time is the charm. Let's head back over. Okay, now let's go ahead and try this one more time. We'll hit our send, and boom, you can see that we got a successful results there. And like I said, I'm just utilizing the secure URL. And this right here, if we just click on that, oops. Let's go ahead and click on that, and this should open it up. And now if you guys can see, this is where it brings me. So there you go. That is how you go ahead and configure your Node server to go ahead and be prepared to take in image uploads. So sweet, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up through DMs or email, just however you can get in contact with me. And